your your acquaintance Jonathan Godfrey, I think, has got things right in that respect. Is that we would need to minimise the amount of extra work people do. It's always the path of least resistance, isn't it? However, the other thing is, I mean, there are various things about innovations, aren't there? Sometimes it's not the best innovation that wins out. It's the one that can gain enough. It's like market share before another one comes to the marketplace, even with the better products. I think the VHS Betamax is an example of that from memory. So yeah, if something was working sooner and giving reasonable results, that might win out over something that arrived in 30 years but gave excellent results. So there's always that playoff between speed to market and effectiveness or excellence.
Betamax and VHS is, well, yeah, it's no longer a relevant question, really.
No.
We don't have tape anymore. We don't even have DVDs anymore, hardly, and all the media is digital. So, and if you like, petrol versus diesel has become much less relevant now that we're moving over to electrical cars, at least, if not trucks.
I mean, certainly if Microsoft were to enable a more, I don't really want to say this in many ways, but if they could actually enable you to essentially put LaTeX equations into your Word documents, then that would go a long way, I think, to making people move away from LaTeX into Word. Using the equation editor in Word is painful. And there are other things they haven't really got right, such as equation labeling, etc. I mean, the wysiwyg stuff makes it incredibly frustrating at times to actually get out of it what you wish to get out of it. And you're thinking, crikey, I could do this in LaTeX in 5 minutes. Why is it taking me 50 in Microsoft Word? But certainly with some competence in Word, you can produce very impressive documents. So yeah, we might make ourselves redundant if we don't get something working sooner rather than later. I mean, I hear the comments about 30 years time, and this is a software product where it's enthusiasts that drive it more than a big business. So yeah, well, I guess we'll see how we move forward.
I'd like to make a comment on Jonathan's remarks about the problem of carrying information across breaks, notably page boundaries, things like color, font style, and so on. There's another thing that rarely gets discussed, but I think we need to give attention to it, and that is that machine translation on the fly is becoming increasingly available and powerful. And in order to have translation of, say, an English language document with page breaks and hyphenated words broken at line boundaries into another language, Japanese, Russian, Chinese, and so on, we need markup that preserves information about what was there before those breaks happened. And we also need markup that identifies the language we're writing in. And so, and it isn't probably even enough to speak of a single language like English, because we have dialectical variations. You know, the parts of a car have different names, like sparking plugs versus spark plugs, bonnet versus hood, and so on, that one really needs if one is going to translate those words into another language. And perhaps Jonathan can comment as to whether, when he developed the rich DVI notion, this idea of it, you know, even more heavily marked up input was in his mind.
Well, I've been asked to speak. My realization was that you could make the typesetting engine of a wysiwyg editor. we can click on a PDF file, and through a process called inverse search, we can often get to the right place in the source file, but it's approximate, it's not precision. And the idea I had was, well, if you could get the source file out of the DVI file with a high level of granularity, then you can edit the DVI file, so to speak, word by word, and every so often the typesetting catches up, and you have to deal with other things as well. But the thinking was that the abstract thing that tech does is this rendering, this breaking of paragraphs into lines in particular. And every wysiwyg word processor has some sort of rendering engine that then displays something that you can edit. And I would describe a rich DVI file as not only something that you can generate a tagged PDF out of, but something you can edit. So I certainly had in mind that there would be a piece of extra information attached to the beginning and the end of every word. Because of the typesetting process, in particular ligatures, so when you typeset fish, you have three glyphs, the FI ligature and the S and the H. And so there's not a one-to-one correspondence to the parts of the typeset word and the parts of the original word. But on a word-by-word basis, one could manage that. So each word sort of corresponds to a part of the source file, and that would be good enough. So that was definitely the goal I had in mind, and that was in 1996. And my PC was a 286 PC with 2 megabytes of memory and so forth. So it was an idea rather than a practical thing. Since then, I've had the idea of running tech as a callable function, which means that you can ask it to typeset one paragraph and there's no startup time. It just comes back immediately. So that's one of the goals that I would like to see whilst I'm alive. And it would be one of the consequences of taking my approach of rich DVI rather than the LaTeX project's approach of do it all with LaTeX inside PDF tech. I think I've answered your question, Nelson.